Oh, we are live. Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome back to the final installment currently in my Undisputed series review. Today I'll be reviewing the fourth installment in the Undisputed series, and what I sincerely hope is currently not the last, because admittedly the ending to this movie really leaves me wanting more. And that is 2017's Boyka, Undisputed 4. Yes, you heard me right. This movie came out this year, earlier this year, though it's got kind of a bit of a funny story behind that. Remember how I said that last time was the last film's going to be the last time we would get a film that comes out every 4 years? Yeah, there's a story behind that. Turns out Undisputed 4 was supposed to be released either in 2015 or in 2016. But the distributors of the film kept pushing it back because Undisputed 3, god damn it, I hate my hair. Undisputed 3 apparently did not sell very well. It had a budget of about $3 million and it made barely like $300,000 in its return investment. And that's because of a whole bunch of hackers decided to illegally download the film for free. Which is the reason why we didn't see Undisputed 4 until this year. Which, admittedly, it's not that much of an issue for me because I wasn't aware of these films until at the beginning of this year, admittedly. But I still do think that it's a real damn shame that it took us so long for us to get this movie on Blu-ray and DVD, which, yes, this is the only one of the series that I do own on Blu-ray, and it looks spectacular on Blu-ray. But aside from that, and that story being told, let me get into the plot synopsis of Undisputed 4, because admittedly, I don't really have that much to say about this film. Not because it's bad, but just because it's interesting. So Undisputed 4 takes place, I'd say anywhere from 4 or 5, maybe even 7 years after the events of Undisputed 3. Boyka is now a more professional MMA fighter who fights for legit money. And he's living in Ukraine, and he has a manager, and he's of pretty decent means, and he's enjoying his life outside of prison. And he donates a decent amount of his funds that he gets from fights to his local church. Sorry, somebody messaged me. Saw Star Wars again. Good for you. Shit, where was I? Oh yeah, he donates a decent amount of his funds to the local church in hopes of, some kind of repentance on his part for his previous crimes. And his pastor there says, if you surround yourself in violence, you eventually will succumb to violence. Which he's kind of right, but Boyka just still thinks, nah, I just do it as a sport. We have rules. I'll be fine. So in the second fight that we see in the film, Boyka ends up accidentally killing his opponent when he delivers a pretty significant blow to the man's head, which I believe he died from either blunt force trauma or a subdural hematoma. Sorry, I gotta fix my camera here. There we go. But he does end up dying from taking too big of a hit, and Boyka is almost beside himself. It's very obvious that he did not intend to kill the man. He just got caught up in the fury of a fight and just went a little too far. But he expresses definite remorse over accidentally killing this man. So he gets his manager to get him a fake passport so he can smuggle himself into Russia so he can track down the man's wife. His name was his opponent was named Victor, and his wife is named Alma. So he gets his fake passport and he goes back into Russia. He knows it's a risk because he's a wanted man there. And he tracks down Alma, who works at a community center for troubled kids. Turns out Alma and her husband had borrowed a significant amount of money from a local mob boss named oh crap, I can't remember his name. I'm sorry. I want to say his name is Goulash, but I don't think that's it. I'll just call him the mob boss. Alma and her husband had borrowed a significant amount of money from this mob boss to fund this community center, and now that Victor is dead, all of his debts have come down to her. So he essentially forces her into slave labor and forces her to work for him at his nightclub to pay off her debts, which she clearly is not happy about, and he clearly is very happy about it because he wants to fuck her till she's raw, even though he's like twice her age. Anyway, so Boyka arrives in Russia, and he finds Alma at this community center. And at first, he is met with resistance when he tries to confront her and say, I'm sorry for what I did, but this mob boss's thugs tell Boyka to fuck off and stay away from her. Ooh, we have one watcher. Hello. So Boyka gets into a little bit of a fight with this mob boss's thugs, and impressed at his fighting skills, this mob boss comes out and says to him, you know, I like your skills. I want you to fight for me. But Boyka just says, no, I'm not interested. I just want to speak with Alma for a minute. And obviously this mob boss, since he sees her as his property, he is just, am I late? No, you're not exactly late. Anyway, he sees her as his property, so he tells Boyka, stay the fuck away from her. If I see you near her again, I'll kill you. So Boyka walks away from the club, but the next day he shows up at the community center, knocking out another thug twice. Once when he enters, once when he leaves. It's kind of amusing. And he approaches Alma and tells her, I was the man who murdered your husband, and I'm really sorry about it. And obviously at first she rebuffs him in anger, saying, you know, there is something you could do for me. Bring him back. And Boyka says, I can't, obviously. So she says, get the hell out of my face and stay away from me. So Boyka goes to this mob boss's club and roughs up a couple of his thugs and says, all right, you want me to fight? Fine. I'll fight 3 fights. In return, when I win, you wipe her debt clean. And the man agrees, and he says, one condition. You must defeat my champion. There's a little bit of a twist later that I'll get to. And Boyka agrees to the conditions. At first, he finds a local gym near the nightclub to train at, but he notices that all the dudes there are just douchebags. So after the first fight at the nightclub, which goes pretty much without a hitch, and it's definitely the easiest of all the fights in the film, Boyka asks Alma if there's another place that he can train at, and Alma says you can train at the community center. That's where her husband trained as well. So he does, and he bonds with the young kids a little bit at the community center, and he gets to know Alma just a little bit more. So the second fight of the film, Boyka goes up against 2 opponents. This is the first for the series where Boyka goes up against 2 opponents at once. This fight obviously is a much bigger challenge, and in the process, Boyka suffers a pretty bad back injury where I think he fractured either a couple ribs or he fractured a vertebrae in his spine because one of the opponents had done a flying drop kick into his back and fucked him up pretty bad. but he still defeats the two and kicks the shit out of them. So Alma, when he decides to do some nighttime post-fight training, she whips up some soothing back ointment and rubs it on his back, and Boyka says, "Why don't you just leave?" But Alma says to him, "I can't leave, because if I leave, these kids will think I abandoned them. Of course, you wouldn't understand that, because you don't care about kids." And she scuffs away in a hurry. So the next morning, this mob boss is getting particularly pissed off because he sees that Boyka is pretty strong. And confronts Alma saying, "Are you fucking him? Are you fucking him behind my back? Even though you and I aren't dating and you're not interested in me, but I just still want to fuck you." So he gets pissed off and says he comes to this community center, I'll kill him. The final. Okay, wait, hold on. Before the final fight commences, Alma confronts Boyka, saying, "Tell me the truth. Did you really mean to kill my husband, or was it really an accident?" And Boyka pretty much says it's a little of both. "I didn't intend to kill him, but I saw him as a big obstacle, and I wasn't going to let him stop me on my way to the championship." And of course, Alma is not happy to hear about this. But during the final fight, Boyka goes up against what we think is this mob boss's champion, Igor Kazmir. And Igor proves to be a pretty competent fighter, but Boyka, despite his really bad back injury, kicks the living shit out of him. And we think that the fight's over. But as Boyka is about to leave to board his bus that he has scheduled so he can return to Ukraine to attend his legitimate world championship fight, the mob boss says, "You didn't defeat my champion." Earlier in the film, he had contacted the warden of Boyka's old prison in Cholchi-Chomia, and says, "I want my champion. I want Kashmar." Kashmar is played by a 6'8", 310-pound bodybuilder. Can't remember his name, but this is him right here. Who, I swear to God, he's the bastard love child of Vin Diesel and the Incredible Hulk. Because the dude looks like Vin Diesel, and the dude's 6'8", and he's fucking huge. So, this guy turns out to be this mob boss's champion. And he also brings along the warden of Cholchi-Chomia, who we've played by the same actor in Undisputed 2, 3, and 4. And they discover Boyka is back in Russia. So they bring Kashmar, who is this big motherfucker. I can't even tell you how big he is. Strapped up in leather restraints in this photo here. Looking a bit like Bane from The Dark Knight Rises. And Boyka and Kashmar get into the final fight of the film. At first, because, Kashmar is almost a foot taller than Boyka, utterly just beats the living shit out of Boyka. But Boyka uses his speed and his agility to his advantage and ultimately ends up defeating Kashmar. However, the mob boss is still pissed off and is just like, "How dare you defeat my champion and take my bitch that is not mine away from me." So he tries to take Alma away and sends his thugs to beat the shit out of Boyka with baseball bats. However, Boyka regains his will to fight and rips out one of the baseball bats and kicks the shit out of the thugs. However, he receives 2 gunshot wounds, but Boyka himself recovers a firearm and kills this mob boss's main henchman. He follows him outside the nightclub, and right as he's about to kill both Alma and Boyka, Alma bites the mob boss's arm. Boyka charges him, beats the crap out of him a couple times, and then proceeds to strangle this mob boss, killing him. Boyka is picked up by the authorities of Russia and brought back to Cholchi-Chomia, and is visited by Alma 6 months later, and says, "I forgive you for what you did." And Boyka returns to his to his old stomping grounds in the underground arena of the prison, and seems to kind of embrace it as he, does like a triumphant, "I'm back, bitches!" And then roll credits, end of the series. Hopefully not. So how about this story? Well, it's not bad when you watch this movie in and of itself, but admittedly, compared to the last movie, this movie's plot does kind of fall short for me, at least. Then again, Undisputed 3 is such a kick-ass film, I kind of feel like you almost can't top that. And this movie tries to top that, but ultimately it doesn't necessarily fail, but at the same time it kind of does. It's not bad, but it's not great either. So what are the pros of Undisputed 4? Pretty much the same thing as the last time, although I will start off with the villain of this movie is actually pretty decent. I can't remember the guy's name for the life of me. I just got done watching this movie. Kulchov or some shit? I can't remember his name, so I'll just call him Russian mob boss. This mob boss, he has a sense of like threat to him. Like, even though he's kind of an older dude, he definitely has power in his hands, and he has he snaps his fingers and somebody can disappear just like that. And he has the actor who plays him definitely does a good job portraying him. I think it's Abuto Tidora Duhavanka. I'm sorry, I don't know Russian names, but I think it's that guy. And he really does do a good job portraying this character. He's kind of a smartass. He's a douchebag. He's a slimy asshole. But he also just kind of has a sort of a sense of, at times he knows when to be sincere, but also that it's fake. And also at times it seems like he is being sincere and it's not fake. It's a little hard to explain, but the actor who portrays this guy does a really good job as the villain. Not to say that this is one of the greatest villains ever. I mean, he's a typical mob boss who has power up the yin-yang and throws a fit when he doesn't get his way, which he does twice. But especially compared to Monroe from Undisputed 1, this guy's not half bad. And overall, the characters and the acting in this movie are very good. The best character in this movie, hands down, is Boyka. Not just because he's our protagonist, but because Scott Adkins nails Boyka in this film. Utterly nails Boyka. I still somewhat prefer his acting in Undisputed 3, but I definitely can tell that Scott Adkins had improved as an actor. Not to say he was bad, but his acting had significantly improved, and he completely brought his A game when playing Boyka in this film. Because we see a side of Boyka that we've never seen before. We see the kind and the more gentle and the more emotional Boyka. Aside from just the rage-fueled, ass-kicking monster that we've seen in the previous two films, here we get to see him as a remorseful man. And Scott Adkins just nails the ever-living shit out of this part. Oh my god, Scott Adkins is so awesome in this film. And the actress who portrays Alma, I think her name is Alon Moni. Again, I apologize, I'm not really good with Russian names, but she does a really, really good job. Hard on the outside, soft on the inside. Yeah, I guess you could say he is. But the actress portraying Alma, she does a really, really good job. Even though she doesn't have that many lines, she still gives a very strong performance. She's kind of the it's definitely a case of it's a lamb that married a lion. Her husband being the lion and her being the lamb. It's very obvious she's not a fighter. She's not like a trained combatant anyway. She's kind of it seems like she has a bit of a strong will, but she's surrounded by so many men who can just kill her at the snap of a finger, and she's so afraid of everybody around her. It's not really a bad thing, but just overall, the actress who portrays her does a really good job. And she delivers her lines well, and she doesn't act like a total damsel in distress. At least she tries to fight back and run away. So that's and overall the acting from the rest of the cast is pretty decent as well. So that's 3 pros. Pro number 4 is once again the cinematography for this film is very, very, very solid. And I finally figured out why the cinematography is so solid. See that logo right there? Yeah. Universal had their hands on this film. And it definitely shows. This movie has the Universal look to it. It has, it looked like they used equipment in Universal Studios to film this movie, and it has the Universal feel to it. And the cinematography for this movie is very, very, very good. There's a lot of wide open scenery that shows off the landscape of just kind of a more quiet, and just kind of slightly innocent looking areas of Russia. There's a lot of well lit open scenery. The nightclub shots, they're nicely shot. Yes, Universal Pictures really does kick ass. The nightclub scenes, they're well shot, they're well lit. They kind of have almost a film noirish kind of look to them, if you ask me. Overall, the cinematography in this movie is very, very, very solid. The fight choreography in this movie is utterly excellent. I would definitely say it's on par with the previous film. The fights, they're very smoothly integrated into the film. Yeah, Legendary Pictures does a good job too. Anyway, the choreography is very smooth. It looks like it was meticulously planned. It was well practiced. It was well rehearsed. Nobody flubbed up in their combat scenes. Scott Adkins, once again, even though he's 41 years old, he still proves that he's got it in him to keep up with faster, bigger, and younger opponents. And overall, the fight choreography is very well done, is very impressively executed. And the fight scenes, this is the last pro, the fight scenes overall are fan-fucking-tastic. We don't, goddamn, what the fuck are these in my face? Look like spider bites. Anyway, the fight scenes, there's not as many in this movie as there was in the previous film, but they still are very, very good. Let's see, we get the little fight in the beginning. Boyka versus Victor. Boyka versus the first thug. Like the first main fight. Boyka versus the two brothers. Boyka versus Igor. And Boyka versus Koshmar. So we get 6 fights. But they are kind of lengthy. And they're well choreographed and they're very fun to watch. And they still do kick a lot of ass. And it certainly keeps this movie feeling like an Undisputed film. They're very well choreographed. And just overall, they're very, very fun. So with all these good things to say, are there any cons for Undisputed 4? There's one. This is more just a more thing regarding my taste. I really don't like the ending to this movie. I would have really liked it if Boyka just was not sent back to prison. Because admittedly, I feel like sending Boyka back to prison is a cop-out. I would have, even though, yes, he went to prison because he committed first-degree murder, which is not good, obviously, but Boyka's done a lot of good stuff in his life. He's donated a lot to churches. He saved a woman from slavery and potentially death. I think he's repented for his sins, and I would have loved to see him return to Ukraine and potentially... I would have been fine if Alma had decided to stay in in Russia, but I also would have been fine if she came back with Boyka to Ukraine, not like as a potential lover, but just as, you know, somebody to be around, just as a friend or as an ally. I would have loved to see that, and I would have loved to see him continue his life outside of prison. But we don't, and he gets sent back to prison, and admittedly, I really don't like that. So that's really my only problem that I have with Undisputed 4. But outside of that, if you are an Undisputed fan, I definitely do recommend Undisputed 4. It's an entertaining installment, and if this is going to be the finale, I guess you could do worse, but as a finale, it's kind of bittersweet. Like I said, I really don't like the ending to this movie because I really wish that he didn't go back to prison. Some people may disagree, and if you do, that's fine. But if you are an Undisputed fan, I definitely do recommend you check this out. It's certainly an entertaining film. So I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. I was going to give it a 7, but upon this recent rewatching, this is only the second time I've seen this film. I found myself enjoying the film, and I saw the good things in it, and I definitely don't. I'd watch this movie more often than I watch the first Undisputed film. So I think an 8 out of 10 is a pretty fair score. And with before I get to the closing lines, I will rank. Watch out, Sharknado. No, I am. Actually, I just might review the Sharknado movies at one point. Anyway, I'm going to rank the Undisputed movies right here and now. If I did a video for that in and of itself, it'd be pointless because there's only 4 movies. At the very top of my list, I have Undisputed 3. Because that movie just kicks all sorts of ass. It's not even funny. Right below that is Undisputed 2. Because Undisputed 2, while I don't enjoy it nearly as much... Actually, no, I enjoy it pretty closely to Undisputed 3. But I still don't. I like it a little less than 3. But Undisputed 2 is still a fan-fucking-tastic film. Below Undisputed 2 is Undisputed 4. I guess, like I said, I don't have that much to say about this movie, and I don't like it as much as 2 and 3, but I still do enjoy it. And at the very bottom, we have Undisputed 1. It was a good start, but if you compare the first Undisputed film to the rest of the Undisputed movies, the first one really is the black sheep of the series. And I also want to say, Scott Adkins, if you ever get around to seeing my reviews, or if any of, like Michael J. White, or the guy who plays Kashmar, highly unlikely, but still, if they ever get around to seeing these reviews, keep kicking ass, keep training, keep practicing martial arts, keep giving us entertaining martial arts movies. And Michael J. White, if you ever see this, very soon I'll be reviewing your movie Blood and Bone. I'm going to have some good things to say about that. So with all that said, again, Scott Adkins, keep kicking ass. Love you, bro. Post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share this video with your friends. And as always, I might see you in the ring next time. And I will see you in the next video.